Good afternoon. Welcome to the Sealed Air webinar, Don't Wait to Deal with Freight. My name is Larry. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Just a few housekeeping things before we begin. During the event, all lines will be on mute. However, we really like to hear from you and address your questions. Use the chat questions module at the bottom of your screen or the answer widget to send us questions throughout the presentation, and we'll address them at the end. There are additional widgets at the bottom of your screen that give you access to your various social media outlets should you wish to share what you're hearing with your network. And we also encourage you to participate in our poll questions during the webinar. These will pop up right on your screen and our speaker will talk to them. At this point, I'd like to introduce our featured speaker so we can get into our content. The speaker today is Jeff Potts, Business Director, Global Mailer Solutions, Product Care Division at Sealed Air. Jeff?
Thank you, Larry, and welcome everybody. We really appreciate you joining us today. I hope that we have a few things that you'll find beneficial as you stop waiting and in fact deal with freight issues with the new dimensional weight pricing policies that we've seen take effect here in the United States. Again, my name is Jeff Potts, and I work specifically in the Mailer Solutions portion of Sealed Air's Product Care, where we spend our time helping customers with protective packaging. And I'd like to wish everybody a happy holiday season. This is a terrific time of year to talk about dimensional weight as packages are shipping all over North America in preparation for the upcoming holidays. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at our next slide. If you'll follow along, I'd appreciate it. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about what's with all the awareness of dimensional weight. And what exactly is dim weight? Dim, short for dimensional weight. What is dim weight pricing? How are UPS and FedEx's policies regarding dimensional weight changing? And what can be done about it? Because it is a major issue for customers and for recipients of packages in the small parcel environment around North America. And then why is this number 166 so important? This is a key takeaway, and we'll talk in depth about number 166. So before we go any further, we're going to have an interactive approach today. I'd like to invite each of you on the call to participate in some poll questions. And this is live, real time, and we're going to be summarizing the results as we speak. The first poll question is, how are you or your customers dealing with the recent changes to dimensional weight pricing? First answer, haven't thought about it yet. Second answer, just starting to talk about it now. Third answer, already have a plan in place. And lastly, not going to make any changes. Please choose the answer that you feel fits best for you, and we'll take a look here on the next slide at exactly what the real-time polling data is telling us. So, just started talking about it. By far the winner at 65% based on the audience. I guess it's perfect timing to spend a little more time on dimensional weight and what it is and how we can help our customers and how our customers can benefit from making changes in this area. So let's go back to the beginning. This is actually a couple articles from last summer, not this past summer 2015, but all the way back to 2014. And there was an announcement that was made that dimensional weight pricing was going to, quote unquote, jolt e-commerce, especially if UPS follows suit. It started with Federal Express, and FedEx said, we're going to change our policies last summer, effective January 1st, 2015. And sure enough, as you see on the right-hand side, UPS did follow suit. So FedEx started and UPS followed suit. And this is a kind of thing that has been really quite noticeable in the public eye and in articles and the news media. And in fact, here's an example on this slide of where we've seen articles written by even the Wall Street Journal where they're explaining to the market that due to dimensional weight policy change in pricing, we can see the freight costs for things like toilet paper going up as much as 37%. So it really depends on the products, their size and their density. If they're light and bulky, dim weight is a big story. If they're heavy and dense, it's less of a story. But if you add it all up, bottom left, here's another article. DC Velocity calculated that UPS and Federal Express combined are actually in a position to add more than $500 million in revenue annually in 2015. And sure enough, the revenue has been kicking in. So our next poll question. Have you or your customers seen a rise in shipping costs this year? First answer, no, and I expect rates to rise. I don't expect rates to rise. Second question, no, not yet, but I'm planning for rising costs. Third, yes, a small increase, less than 10%. Next one, yes, between 10 and 20%. And lastly, yes, more than 20% of an increase. So please submit your question or your answers, and we'll see how this audience sees this question about freight costs. Yes, a small increase, followed by yes, between 10 and 20%. So this is absolutely a real issue in the marketplace. Now, let's take a look at how USPS is responding. The United States Postal Service has actually used this as an opportunity to gain volume. So they've chosen not to implement a dimensional weight price policy. In fact, they have a clever ad campaign that maybe you've seen that says, how much does this 1 pound box weigh? 11 pounds if you're using the wrong shipping company. It's pretty clever, and the point of the ad is that even though it only weighs 1 pound, their competitors might have you paying much more than that. So far, United States Postal Service has not implemented dimensional weight pricing, and of course we all get a lot of packages from USPS. Clearly they are often the choice for our shippers out there. Other times FedEx or UPS makes more sense. So let's get on to the definition. Dimensional weight. Now I went to the web and I said, okay, what's Wikipedia think about this? Wikipedia stands for quick. Wicca is quick in Hawaiian. Wikipedia says dimensional weight, also known as volumetric weight, is a pricing technique for commercial freight transport. So you might say volumetric weight, dimensional weight, cube weight. There's different ways to describe it, but that's Wikipedia's take on it. What it really is, in a science, is the fact that freight carriers, specifically UPS and FedEx, on January 1st, 2015, implemented a rule that says you take the dimensional weight of a product. It's not really a weight, it's a hypothetical weight. And you take the length of the box in inches times the width in inches times the height to get your cubic inches, and then you divide that by this special number we talked about in slide 2, 166. The divisor, 166, is the calculation for this hypothetical weight. So length times width times height, cubic inches, divided by 166 equals a number which becomes your dimensional weight. So for our shippers out there, you have two choices, not really a choice at all, but two measurements that determine your billable weight. The first is your actual weight, pretty clear, right? You weigh the box, and if that box weighs 1 pound, like in the USPS example, that actual weight is 1 pound. If, on the other hand, the dimensional weight, length times width times height, divided by 166, comes in at 11 pounds, like in the UPS ad, the billable weight is actually the greater of the two, the greater of the actual or dimensional weight being a hypothetical weight. And that's what rate you pay when it comes to the pricing schedules from UPS and FedEx that we'll look at here in a little bit. So it's that simple. Now, let me point out a few things. This rule was, prior to January 1st, 2015, something that was exempt from ground freight packages in the United States that are 3 cubic feet or less. So if a package was about the size of a dorm room refrigerator or smaller, prior to January 1st, it didn't have a dimensional weight rule. It was just the actual weight. But If the package was ground freight larger than 3 cubic feet, it actually had a dimensional weight rule and always did, or if it was air freight, or if it was international freight. So the point is that dimensional weight is actually nothing new. It's just that the implementation of this requirement for ground freight under 3 cubic feet in the United States of America is brand new and drove revenue, as we said earlier, equal to around $500 million. So there's opportunities to reduce those consequences. Let's take a look at our next polling question. What percentage of you or your customers shipments do you estimate will be impacted by the recent dim weight changes? Less than 10%, 25%, 50%, or greater than 75%? What percentage of your customer shipments or your shipments do you estimate will be impacted by the recent dim weight changes? Survey says about 25%, and then over 75% is a close second. So clearly this is a real issue. So let's learn a little bit more. There's a couple rules in calculating dimensional weight that you'll find most often are the case. Dim weight in pounds, cubic inches divided by 166. The first thing is when you're measuring your carton dimensions, you actually take the length times the width times the height, but you actually round up or down to the nearest whole inch. So, for example, a 10¼ inch dimension rounds down to 10, or a 10.5 or 10½ inch dimension rounds up to 11. 10¾ would round up to 11. So the first step is to take your length, your width, and your height and round up or down. Anything 10.5, a ½ inch or higher in a fraction would be rounding up. Anything under ½ inch would be rounding down. Once you've done that, then you take those three whole numbers, length times width times height, and you calculate your cubic and divide by 166. One last step when calculating dim weight, the second box here, you actually take that number and you round up all the time. So, for example, if dim weight is 11.2 pounds, you actually pay the 12-pound rate. So it's always rounding up once you've calculated the hypothetical dimensional volumetric weight. So let's look at our example specifically. A carton with the outer dimensions of 12¼ that's rounded down to 12. 12 is exactly 12, and 12½ is rounded up to 13. So you take 12 times 12 times 13, you get 1872. You divide that by 166, and you end up with a 11.27 pound dim weight, which is automatically raised to the 12-pound bracket. Hopefully you find that simple and perhaps informative. So, how does this apply to mailers? One thing that's interesting is that if you actually take this link, which is in the bottom of this slide, once this PowerPoint's downloadable in PDF, you'll find that at Federal Express, they actually, in fact, promote mailers when it makes sense. Highlighted here, for example, using padded or poly mailers may suit your needs, meaning product protection, and decrease the unnecessary dimensional weight consequences for your traditional legacy cartons. So generally speaking, what's happening? People need to do a better job making big boxes, medium boxes, small boxes, and taking small boxes and putting them in mailers. Each of these steps will help negate the consequences of dim weight. But there's more. How does it exactly apply to mailers? Boxes are boxes, right? Length times width times height makes sense. But with mailers, it's important to know that it's actually the overall dimension based on all three of these variables. In fact, let me take a moment and point out how this works. The packaging facilities, handling facilities for these types of companies, UPS, FedEx, have installed scanners that will literally measure the length, the width, the height of the package to determine dim weight as that package speeds by on the conveyor system. That's tied ultimately all the way back to the customer number that is actually shipped that product, and a make good takes place. So it's very important that the packer in the shipping department does a nice job in their manifesting system to not only get the accurate weight of a package, but also the accurate length, width, and height of a package, because that manifesting system is going to generate a cost for the freight at the shipping department, at our customer, or your shipping department, and you might be using that number, for example, to add freight to an invoice, prepay bill and add, or perhaps collect. But the truth is that that number is not validated until this package goes through the scanners at the shipping center, in which case they do a make good. So if the operator's perception of length times width times height is incorrect, there's going to be a make good, and UPS or FedEx is actually going to correct and bill the billable rate that they've calculated to be accurate. So with mailers, soft packages, they're scanned in the same way as a carton. And anything that's an irregular profile, like a mailer, or perhaps a funny-looking box that's been modified to fit a chair where it looks kind of like a chair, anything that's an irregular profile, the scanner will use the largest of each dimension to create a virtual box. The scanner says to itself, which of these dimensions, of all of the dimensions, which one's the longest? Of all the dimensions, which one's the widest? And of all the dimensions, which one is the highest? Then you end up with a virtual box, if you will, something that's a cube, and even though the mailer is irregularly shaped, it's going to feature that virtual dimension. Any questions? Shoot us a text and we'll address it at the end. So, common sense tells us, what are some best practices with mailers and other soft packaging? Smaller is always better, okay? So it's good to actually reduce the size of the mailer if possible, or the box. If a customer ships an item in a number 7 mailer and he can get it in a number 6 mailer, which has got a smaller length and width, let's step it down and use a smaller dimension. If a customer is using a poly mailer, perhaps commonly found the 14.5 by 19 inch soft poly mailer, for a 9 by 12 by 2 shirt, fold that mailer over to affect the smallest package possible at the time it's being scanned. Reduce the overall length, width, and height of that mailer. Remove any air or packaging from the mailer if possible. If you don't need cushioning, take it out, because that bulk's going to turn into cost. And costs add up very quickly in the dimensional weight world. We'll show you that in a moment. So here's a quick example. If we take an iPhone 6, many of us on the call might have one in their pocket, and if we were to ship it in a 12 by 10 by 3 carton, it's going to come in at billable weight 3 pounds based on dim. The dim is going to be the higher of the actual and the dim. Now, if we take that same product and we ship it in a number 5, Jiffy Lite, which is a craft bubble mailer, you're going to find a billable rate at 3 pounds. Same exact billable rate, so no favor. But if we take that same product and downsize it to a number 2 Jiffy Lite mailer, which is a little more than 8 by 10 by 2 inches, when the product's in there, you'll find that it's only billable at 2 pounds. That's an actual savings between the 2 pound and the 3 pound bracket of 55 cents per package in ground freight. So remarkable how quickly this can add up. In fact, freight costs much more than the packaging in many cases. So it's important to make good, informed packaging decisions. Now, a question that might get asked, and I figured we'd address, is what about Canada? And what about international? Well, we're not going to focus on it in a whole lot of detail, but the short answer is when you're shipping internationally from the U.S. to Canada or from the U.S. to Mexico, the dim weight divisor is reduced to 139. But because it's going down, it actually drives up the consequence. So a lower divisor leads to a higher freight rate. So international dim weight divisors are 139 for the most part. That's from the U.S. to Canada. It's also from Canada to the U.S. Another data point is, what about Canada domestically in Canada from one province to the next? Well, the dim weight divisor is 166, just like in the United States, effective January 1st. Something, though, that's very interesting. Canada had a ground freight dim weight divisor in place for packages less than 3 cubic feet for many, many, many years prior to this policy change on January 1st in the United States. Not sure exactly how far back it goes, but more than 10 years. So what we found is that it's nothing new in Canada, but because of the awareness that it's created in the U.S., I've found that globally people are becoming more sensitive to this phenomenon and the opportunity to reduce their costs. The other thing I'd point out about Canada is that their divisor, 166, had been in place for many years. So perhaps that's where the divisor comes from for the United States, because no one has a very clear answer on that. At least I don't. We're gathering information and sharing it with you to the best of our ability, and all we know is that 166 was used before. So let's take a look at the original announcement. Both FedEx and UPS shared this announcement summer of 14, and they positioned it as an opportunity to improve the environmental benefits, less packaging, less fuel used. The truth is that trucks cube out before they weigh out. So this time of year, how many of us on the call have seen a Hertz truck or a Penske rental truck going down the street with a UPS driver in it or a FedEx driver? They run out of capital when it comes to cubing out. So the trucks were cubed out sooner than later. So this is a really good business decision to make more efficient use of the trucks so that we can get packages to customers more efficiently. Here's a recent display of the explanation for why dim weight is part of FedEx's policies. On their website, if you want to do a little searching, you'll see that why is it important to use proper packaging? Well, FedEx explains that recent e-commerce shipping trends have led to a decrease in packaging density. The average package weight compared to the exterior dimensions is declining, which is inefficient and costly for small businesses. Dimensional weight pricing methods will encourage businesses everywhere to optimize their packaging practices. You know, the truth is that's an absolute fact. And I look back on my career in the packaging industry, and when I started out in the 90s, we were packaging heavy industrial products, and they were going UPS, reels, motors, gears, solenoids, and those things are still getting shipped. But what else is going nowadays? Toilet paper, all your pantry items. Amazon Pantry is booming, and things that are small in nature like earbuds and Bluetooth devices. So there is definitely a shift in the things that we ship in North America and around the world. So why would they be doing this? Let's take a look here. Here's an example, actually, of a package that one of our employees received recently. And it shows you that this Barbie doll had an awful lot of room in there for friends. The truth is, what a waste of space. The large inflatable dunnage was not an efficient use, and sometimes shippers like us, we get trapped into this because we want to have as few boxes in our shipping department as possible, right? SKU reduction, instead of 10 cartons, maybe we want to have 3 to pick from. Well, 3 instead of 10 means lots of dunnage, and dunnage costs money. So for FedEx and UPS, I'm going to speculate. Why would we have done this? Well, I don't want to cube out before I weigh out. I'd like the revenue. I'd like to do what's right for the environment. I'd like smaller boxes, less to recycle. I'd like more efficient packaging, more engineered packaging that's effective, tested, proven, so that those packages assure that the product gets safely to its destination. There are lots of reasons why this makes sense for the freight carriers, but the truth is, I think it makes sense for the whole world. So these are our targets. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to find ways to reduce the cube. Things that are light and wasting space are where the consequences hit. It's an opportunity. Anybody can remove packaging material, but I encourage those of you on the phone and on our call today to find a partner that can do so without sacrificing protection. People that know how to package wisely, smart packaging. Dim weight policy change is an opportunity to help shippers convert to an optimal solution while reducing the carton size or moving to a mailer. So, you save money two ways. You have smaller packaging and a smaller carton, but you also have smaller freight costs. It's important to remember, though, that sometimes an investment in engineered packaging will actually offset those incremental that incremental cost can be offset by the benefits that we're just outlining here. So you got to really take an analysis approach and do what's best, considering all the costs involved in that freight experience. So the analysis recommendation: you measure your smaller box with the new packaging. You calculate your volume in cubic inches. You divide by 166 if it's domestic to get that dim weight. Increase that fraction to the nearest whole. Determine your billable weight. Weigh the box. See if the dim weight is larger than the actual weight. You look it up in the shipping schedule to determine your cost savings between the two, the old pack and the new pack, and you determine annual savings prior to the prior packaging method. So here's an example of the UPS and FedEx ground rates. And what we've done with most of our tools when we work with our customers is we've chosen Zone 5. Now, as you may know, there's zones that represent the distance from a shipper. In some cases, it's based on states. In other cases, it's based on a bit of a circular map based on the distance from a shipper's location. But Zone 1 is closer to home. Zone 2 is further away. Zone 5 is kind of in the middle, and then on the average, 6, 7, 8, of course, is getting further and further from the East Coast to the West Coast, for example. So you really have a lot of calculations to do to really evaluate your entire portfolio of customers. But for Sealed Air, just to help articulate the benefits we bring, we basically go to the Zone 5. We use it as an aggregate. And one thing I'll point out is both UPS's schedule and FedEx's schedule are remarkably identical. So both organizations have the same dim weight policy, and both organizations have the same freight schedule as well prior to any contract negotiations. We take that Zone 5 and we use it in our analyses. So let's take a closer look at what this group on the phone is packing with. If you're a packager, please answer this question. If, on the other hand, you're a consultant in the packaging industry, pick your favorite, perhaps, when it comes to your customers out there. Air pillows, air cellular, in other words, bubble wrap packaging, which is a Sealed Air brand, paper, cushioning or void fill, corrugated die cuts, polyethylene foam, mailers, or other. Please choose what you think you use the most of so we can get a feel for what's this audience's preference. A lot of inflatables. Now, as a manufacturer of inflatables, one thing that I share with the people I come across in dim weight is it's our responsibility to use them as efficiently as possible. It's a wonderful product, but don't fill great big voids with air pillows because you're going to be paying dim weight. It's not a bad idea to have air pillows. It's a great idea. It works well, but make sure you optimize those voids. Air cellular, same story with bubble wrap and paper as well. So responsible use of these packaging materials is what makes the difference. Nobody's using mailers. I'm the mailer guy. All right, so let's talk about mailers since the group isn't really using them. Here's an example. This is a package I received at home. This is a binder, and the carton was 12.5 by 10.5 by 6.25. The actual weight of this carton was 2 pounds. It came in a dimensional weight of 5 pounds. The higher the 2 is the 5, so the 5-pound weight was what was calculated for the freight. Using the Zone 5 UPS and FedEx shipping schedule charge, it would be $8.60, assuming no contractual discounts, as of December last year. The billable weight is was last year only 2 pounds. Okay, shipping charge was $10.09 as of January 2015. That's an increase of 17%, the difference between the actual weight and the billable weight. Pack costs of the inflatables were estimated at 45 cents, the carton was at 60 cents, and the customer perhaps does 1,000 boxes per week. I made this up. The package is real. So the proposed solution is a cube-optimized package, something we do here at Sealed Air, with a mailer, and it loaded, meaning once the product's in that mailer, 14 by 13 by 2.5 dimension. The actual weight is actually 1.8 pounds, a little lighter than it was before, but the dimensional weight dropped to 3 pounds. So with the new policy in January, the shipping charge dropped to $9.15 with a 3-pound dimensional weight. The cost of the mailer was 64 cents. And the volume at 1,000 packages per week shows that there is lots of money to be saved when you do a complete cost analysis. So based on that box going to that mailer and the dimensional weight savings, along with the fact that the packaging before and the packaging after had 2 different costs, times 1,000 packs per week, 52 weeks a year, there's a $70,000 savings for a customer shipping binders at that rate. It really adds up, and that's a number that is actually smaller than some of the analyses that we've done at Sealed Air. So for those of you that are big in shipping departments, please take the time to do the math and figure out how you can help save your company and your customers money. So we're here for you. Find companies like Sealed Air and others with a reputable background that knows their products. We have packaging application labs throughout the world, 29 global locations. We have 77 full-time packaging design professionals, packaging engineers, and others. We are here to provide verification and validation testing, helping our customers win, and prototyping and small pack development. We can do highly engineered pack designs and actually prove that they work for the customers we work with. Companies like Sealed Air and others out there will help people ship more efficiently, and we welcome that. We are your strategic partner. For more than half a century, we've been working and servicing the packaging industry. We've got a complete range of protective packaging products, solutions, and systems, including inflatable products, bubble wrap, inflatable bubble wrap, cushioning products like mailers, Instapak foam-in-place packaging, polyethylene foams, lightweight foams. So a portfolio of such products can help get the right product for the right application. There's a global network of packaging application centers that we mentioned a moment ago. We are capable of offering environmentally responsible solutions that help advance your sustainability goals and minimize damage, and we are the industry leader in service and support. So we'd welcome the opportunity to work with you if you've got some dim weight challenges. With that, I really look forward to answering any questions that the group might have, and I'm going to look to Larry to see if we've got a few in the queue. Okay, let's take a look. Do these dim weight policy changes affect LTL? LTL stands for less than truckload, which is for common carriers. The answer is no. To the best of my knowledge, there's absolutely no effect with regards to less than truckload common carriers. This is limited to the small parcel courier system. Next question. What about Fedex SmartPost, and how is this affected? It's a great question. There's actually a little known feature that some of these shipping companies have, and it's called Fedex SmartPost. UPS calls it SurePost. The United States Postal Service calls delivered USPS. But it's a partnership between UPS and USPS, or FedEx and USPS, where the primary carrier who starts with the shipment, UPS or FedEx, for example, handles the shipment, all but the final mile, you might call it, at which time it's actually turned over to the post office, and then the post office gets the final delivery to a residence, for example. In fact, this particular option, residential parcel options, or deferred residential partial options are exempt at this time. They continue to retain the 3 cubic dim weight exemption as of right now. So it is an option in the market. I have another question. And this is pretty straightforward, so let me please make it perfectly clear because I failed to do so far. I'm not clear, it's asked. Is the less than 3 cubic foot sized still exempt from dim weight or not? The answer is no, it is no longer exempt at UPS, FedEx, or in the case of these deferred residential options where UPS transfers the package. Excuse me, that's the exception. If it's less than 3 cubic feet, ground freight, UPS, and FedEx, it's no longer exempt. The only time it's exempt is if it's USPS, they don't have this rule, or if it's part of the deferred residential partial option, which means UPS hands it off to USPS, or FedEx hands it off to USPS. So the bottom line is, for ground freight in the United States, as it was always in Canada, for UPS and FedEx, there are no more exemptions, unless a large company had a contract in place that deferred the start date of the dimensional weight policy. That has absolutely been the case. So if you're working with companies that might have a contract with UPS or FedEx, you need to find out, do you have any special arrangements? Is there a deferral for the start date? One large company, for example, I recently worked with, had a deferral until the end of December 2015, and their dim weight rules were kicking in January 1st, 2016, a full year after the regular rule kicked in. So I hope that answers your question. Where does UPS WorldShip fall with the less than 3 cubic foot rule? Tim, I'm not absolutely certain on this, so I'd like you to research it, but I'm of the impression that WorldShip is international, and so the international would absolutely have no exemption. You're definitely paying for a dim weight or actual weight, whichever is higher, anytime you're shipping internationally. And those international divisors are different than the domestic divisor of 166. As we mentioned earlier, from the U.S. exporting, it's normally 139, I believe. So you need to find out exactly what the rules are. Next question. How do I know if I'm actually paying dim weight or actual weight? It's a good question. The first step is to do the math yourself. Take responsibility between the weight of the package and the calculation, the dimensional weight of the package, and of course we're going to pay whichever one's higher. But ultimately, it comes back to your monthly billing. So as we mentioned, as these packages go through the distribution centers, they're getting scanned and weighed, and then the manifesting system from the service provider is doing a final calculation and determining a make good on your bill. You'll see it on the following month after all your packages in the month of November are shipped. You'll see it on the December bill, and it'll actually decipher between actual weight or dimensional weight and what your actual freight costs were incurred. One more here. How is Canada affected by these changes? As I mentioned, Canada did not have any new changes. They had always had the ground freight rule for both over and under 3 cubic foot packages. So the Canadian situation did not change on January 1st. It's been that way for many, many years. They've always had dimensional weight policies. Any other questions? So if you've got some, you can go to the Q&A at the very bottom. So we have another one here. Why was the dim weight policy implemented? Well, you know, as a consultant to the industry, I can speculate, and I'm glad to. The first is money. It was a price increase. It led to revenue that, of course, is good for a corporation that exists to make a profit. The second thing is there's a problem. People are shipping more and more, and they're shipping lighter and less dense products. Feather pillows are the enemy in dim weight. So you've got to move products to a denser, more efficient cube. So it was implemented in great part because these shipping companies, especially this week, the busiest freight week of the year, are actually just running out of space. So if you can take 1 million packages and reduce their cube by 40% because you encourage your customer base to pack more responsibly, you've just really improved your circumstances, saved a huge problem. And then also, I think it's fair to say it's really good to look at it from an environmental perspective. It's good for fuel cost reduction. It's good for packaging waste, less of it, more responsible and engineered packaging. I think that's it. I'm going to turn it back over to Larry. And I'd like to thank everybody on the call very much. It's been my pleasure, and I hope you found this useful. Bye for now.
So this concludes our webinar today. Look for follow-up email that will include a link to the recording of today's event for your review. And on behalf of Sealed Air, thank you for joining us, and take time to view the presentation after the event. Thank you.